Okay, so for the first time in 18 months, rent prices across Canada are dropping. After years of skyrocketing prices, tenants are finally seeing some relief. But what's behind this trend? Is this a temporary dip or is this the start of a major shift? Is this going to be a renters buyers market? What's your take, Vaughn? And what are you seeing out there?
Well, I looked at it. It was something like a 4.4% decrease in January year over year. So I'm like, okay, well, if your rent is $2,000 a month, that's $88. $88 a month back in your pocket is definitely not nothing. It's a part of an equation, right? So it's not like somebody went in and said, hey, we're going to save you $88 a month. It just so happens that right now, if you sign a lease, it's going to be on average less than it was the year before. We could all use a little break in that department. I think it doesn't make it a renter's market, but I think at the same time, if you're an investor or you're a property owner that provides that rental service, I don't think that $88 a month is killing you either. So I don't think it would de-incentivize you to invest in property for rental purposes. And I think that it's great if you're a renter. Maybe that's you can buy a little bit more steak this month.
That's what we need, right? I mean, maybe it puts a little bit more money in your pocket. I mean, it's not like it's gone down $88 per person that's renting. It's anybody looking to get a new, rental property. It might be a little less. But if you look, like if you haven't gotten a new rental property in 5 years, let me take a look at this. The cost of rent has still gone up 2.87% since January 2020. So it's not like people are moving every year, and well, maybe some people are, but I think the majority of people move every few years. And so it's probably still expensive for most people unless you moved, in January 2024 before. We've had a whole pile of foreign students leave Canada. We're cutting back on like bringing more people in. So I think this is a direct result of immigration policy, where we're not inviting as many people in. We're people that maybe were here before are not here. And so there's more supply when it comes to it. But if you look at the cost of right before the pandemic at $1,823 to where we are today, which is $2,100, this is across Canada. But that cost is still increased. Certainly, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, but it's increased year over year, 2.87%.
Yeah. And I think a big driver of the decline is from Toronto specifically are those condos that we've talked about nonstop, the condos that are still sitting on the market, the sort of one bedroom in the Bay Street corridor area in Toronto that investors are pulling out because they couldn't get rents for it. So that makes sense. That's the biggest single contributor that brings that number down are the condos. And really, based on what you said about the students and international students, that was largely who was populating those rental units. So there's a little bit of an adjustment that has to be made in order to bring that sort of just into balance and bring up the occupancy.
Yeah, and Ontario specifically has gone down 5.6%. We've got a big population here, so we're going to see, bigger swings. I would think if we have large amounts of population leaving, but we're still in Ontario. We're still the second most expensive place to rent a condo apartment in Canada. So at $2,329, and we're second only to BC. So I think what you're saying is true. Ontario is, we're seeing that decline, but it's a cost of living. This cost of shelter is still a very expensive piece of business.
It really is. I mean, and we talk about that every week, and the effects that has. Last week when we touched on the effects that it has on people's interest to move into this city to pursue other employment. That it could be a barrier. Well, it certainly is a barrier to a lot of people. Sure. If you were moving here on your own with no roommate, and you're staring down a $2,180 rental, you really need some decent employment to justify that expense.
I would assume people are looking at roommates. Our condo that's rented out right now is subletted by 2 roommates. It's a 1-bedroom plus den, so there is some room in there. But I think in terms of cost, like that's a great way to be able to minimize what that cost is. I think my rent when I was renting, it was like I think it was like $900 at like the top end, right? Like for one person. That was still a lot of money, but it was manageable at that
Sure.
time.
And
You
wages
know,
were around the same. Like we haven't seen wage growth come up to like drastically to offset that. So
I
yeah,
was making like nothing at that time. So that was like half of my income was going towards my rent. But you're right. Like we have seen, I think over the last couple years, it's been like 5% wage growth. So theoretically, do I have a slide? Let me see if I got a slide on that
oh, I would love to see a
cost of
slide on that.
living. I don't. So cost of living. Oh, here, let me share this one. So in terms of like the real home price index, which is a measure of home prices after inflation compared to 1980. So this isn't for rent, but maybe this is a good kind of thing to compare it to. You're seeing like, during the pandemic when the prices of housing went way up, you're seeing that big spike where it was 4 times more than what it was in 1980. And now we've dropped back down to under 3 times more than what it was. And so that's the cost as a relation to how much you make and how much you're then spending on buying a home.
Skyrocket.
So it has been going up. It's been going up fairly gradually, but then those spikes, 2017 was one, 2021, 2022 was another one, and then we've dropped back down. And as interest rates come back down, we're seeing a little bit more affordability. Housing prices have come down. Investors have left the market for 1-bedroom condos. So it is more affordable right now than it was a couple of years ago. Anyway, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean that would suggest that. Well, we know that it would be a decent time to purchase right now, especially those 1-bedroom condos. Because nothing's getting built. When you pulled up that earlier slide, it's flat. And if nothing's getting
Yeah.
built today, it means in 5 years nothing new is coming onto the market. Nothing will be available. It's a big time problem. And maybe tying it back to the PC platform of investing in wastewater and that sort of infrastructure, those are the precursors that you need in order to build communities. You need to have that sort of boring infrastructure in place.
Yeah.
We know that it's about 10 years that you need to start investing in that infrastructure 10 years before you're actually building properties on communities.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's a long-term strategy, which makes it intensely boring to pitch for an election campaign.
Yeah.
But
It's
if you know a thing
like,
or two, you know that it's required. So it's a really positive thing to see that we're going to be investing
it's
in
like
the right thing.
the electric underwear of a housing strategy. Like nobody's actually going to see it, but it's something that you really need when it's cold outside.
And it's been cold.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, infrastructure is sexy. I think let's start that. Maybe we need some t-shirts made.
Hashtag at least, we'll
least
go
a
to
hashtag.
Instagram but I don't see you supporting a pro PC infrastructure movement. But I don't care
think
who the
they're already
government
doing
is.
it. I think they're already doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's it's not net new money spent. It's like, well, let's just mark this down as, well, we've been spending it already. So I just don't believe that it's a
And
net
it's like
new
blue,
income.
red, orange. We need that infrastructure build. We need healthcare. We need education. It doesn't matter.
We better be spending money on those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a couple other topics, but we've been rambling on now for close to 40 minutes. Do we want to push that to next week? We were going to talk about the stress test as well. Should we bundle that up?
Yeah, I guess we can talk about. I mean, it's not super urgent at this point to talk about. We're going to talk about the TD exit, but let's talk about that next week.
Let's do that next week. I've enjoyed our chat today. I'm live here at the Royal LePage Signature office while construction goes on in my house. Who knows? Maybe we'll make it a regular thing.
Yeah. And can I just say, like, if you've enjoyed this podcast, if you enjoyed the episode, like, subscribe, make sure you put your comments in the bottom. Vaughn and I read these comments and would love to hear what you're saying. That engagement really helps us. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and your help will help us get there. And we hope you're enjoying it. And Vaughn, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I certainly did. I hope we're still friends after this in terms of our discussion, which I know we are, because we have a good, solid conversation. What do you
Wouldn't
think?
have it any other way, buddy.
Absolutely. All right, guys. See you next week on the Mortgage People Podcast.